we're going to go on to the next session where we're going to hear from Joseph Jutras and Nadia Everard, two of the more significant leaders in architectural education in the world today. Joseph has been working the Institute of Traditional Architecture for some time. He is, I think all of us are both teachers and students, because you cannot be a teacher of this stuff without continually learning. And the learning is like the sort of upward ascending spiral where you cover the same material year after year, but every year you see it from a different perspective and you grow and have more content to share with others. Miss Everard has been doing a marvelous job in Brussels with her program. Mr. Jutras's program is connected with the school, the summer school in Utrecht. I hand over the podium to you two. Have at it. Teach us what we don't know.
So good evening and good afternoon. So this is the beginning of the barbell lectures, I guess, or the barbell sessions. So where two peers present each other's work, and then we'll open up for questions near the end. So I'll just share my screen here. So the way we'll work this is I'll present Nadia's work for about 20 minutes or so, ask her a few questions, then she'll present what I've been doing, ask a few questions, and then whatever time's remaining, we'll open it up to questions from the audience. So we're a bit behind schedule, so I'll hustle along and we'll see how it all works out in the end. But this is Nadia, and there on the left, and this is where she's happiest. She's working on a building that she designed in collaboration with Colin Mulhern, who, if you were in some of the earlier sessions, you would have seen. And she's really proud about this building because not only is it in a traditional design, but it's also built using traditional materials and traditional methods. All of the wood and most of the other materials came within 40 kilometers of the building site in Alsace, France. And also most of the craftsmen also came from within the local area. So it really is a local construction, and it should last for hundreds and hundreds of years, meaning it'll be very, very good for the environment. No materials brought in from far distances, or no off-gassing, as Lucien mentioned before, with all the plastic materials. So this is Nadia in her element when she's most happy. And she was born in Brussels, and she included this particular picture because you can really see what unfortunately has become known as Brusselization of cities, the kind of slow and steady destruction of beautiful buildings with newer, I'd say, less beautiful buildings in their place, unfortunately. Nadia started drawing from a very young age. She actually was in an art academy from the age of 8 to 16. And this is a picture she drew when she was 10 years old. So she'd go once a week to this academy, and she loved drawing buildings, really had an affinity for them, and really appreciated architecture and everything involved with that. And then she went to university to become an architect. And this is what she was taught. You can see a lot of black and white, a lot of vague kind of abstractism inspired by such books as Ornament and Crime and Le Corbusier's books. And there, it kind of took the joy out of architecture for her. And so after her first year, she did a quick tour through Russia during the summer. And it was there that she kind of rediscovered her love and her joy of the traditional crafts, the mosaics. And she found it very interesting that there was that same juxtaposition in Russia of the old, beautiful buildings compared to the newer ones that she saw in her home of Belgium and Spain, and kind of wherever you went around Europe. So this got her excited about traditional architecture once more in the crafts, and she volunteered as a carpenter when she came back to Belgium, and helped making stained glass also as a volunteer, and even joined an organization called the Future for Religious Heritage in Belgium. And so she got a lot of hands-on experience working with old buildings, but also in very traditional crafts type roles. While she was in Belgium, she started also taking pictures of buildings that were being demolished, and just showing how the life cycle of different buildings were being either shortened or extended. And she got a lot of response from this when people saw old, beautiful statues, for example, being disrespected or treated poorly. It really captured the emotion of a lot of her followers that would watch her, that would follow her photos. After her stint in university in Belgium, she went to the UK, and there she took a master's of architecture and a master's of art and design. And this particular picture she submitted in her master's of architecture class, and it was the first time that her professors were open to the idea of something that was more traditionally inspired. And she absolutely loved the color, and she was exploring here. This is one of her first works, but she was thrilled that it wasn't completely rejected by her professors and called pastiche and all those other things that we commonly hear of. And so it inspired her to keep growing and learning and to follow her true passion. And as part of her art and design master's, she read a number of books, Pattern Language by Christopher Alexander, a book by Leon Creer, and L'Architecture by Viollet Leduc. And this also inspired her and gave her a lot of just learning on her own. For her master's topic, it was researching how long buildings last in the UK. And for her final project, when she handed it in, her professor suggested, okay, if you're interested in that, maybe you can go to Sweden. There's a summer school there. And so that's what she did. And that was the point, no return for Nadia. After that, she was totally hooked on traditional and classical architecture. And some of you probably recognize a number of faces here in this picture. And this is where, this was the point of no return. And she was convinced this is what she wanted to do with her life. So she went back to Brussels, and this was in 2019. She went back to Brussels and started a summer school in 2020, which was incredible because that was the year of COVID, if you guys recall. And it was her first time ever, but still she had a group of 5 to 7 students, and it was a great success. They walked around the city doing measure drawings, sketching, learning the fundamentals of traditional architecture and design. And it paved the way for the course second year, also in Brussels. In 2021, she extended it and had even more students coming, this time from all over the world, from Brazil, France, Belgium, Bangladesh, Mexico, Romania, Germany. A lot of different countries came. And here's some pictures. I'll just kind of scroll through them to give you an idea. So that was in 2021. Then in 2022, she moved to Bruges and had a course in Bruges. And every year the school's gotten a little bit bigger, a little bit more established. And here you can see some of the students' work and some of the pictures. And again, I'll just let you guys look at the pictures. So a lot of incredible motifs inspired by nature. And the final project for this summer school was redesigning the train station in Bruges. And so different groups did different portions. And here we see one of the designs for the actual station itself. Really beautifully done. And recently, Nadia wrote an article in French there. It's titled "Architecture, the Education is Bankrupt." And it was quite a rant and very well written. And she's received a lot of feedback from that, and accordingly has had a number of speaking engagements booked. And a lot of people are interested to hear about her opinion more because it really resonates. It really strikes a note that I think a lot of people that maybe aren't in the architectural establishment know that something's not quite right with our built environment. And then next year, of course, there's going to be another summer school in 2020. And this one will be longer. There'll be a component of craftsmanship, actually building the architecture and then architecture itself. So I went through that quite quickly to try to make up some time. I hope that's okay. But I've got just a few questions now for you, Nadia, if you want to unmute your mic.
Yes, please.
So I guess, can you tell us maybe some of your challenges that you've experienced over the 3 summer schools so far, and maybe also what has been very gratifying for you? So your low moments and your high moments.
I think the challenge is to teach and to learn at the same time, because I'm still learning every day, and Colum has been of great help for that, and many other people that have helped us during all the different summer schools and that are still going to help. So I'm so glad that this community is very solidary and very, very helpful. And so yes, that's one of the challenge. And the other one is that so the summer school is run by a non-profit association, so called La Table Ronde de l'Architecture, which represent also INBO Belgium. And we are working a lot, and I hope in the future more with INBO Netherlands, which is just our cousin just next to us, and also maybe to have like some link, with the summer school in Utrecht. I think that would be fabulous. That students can exchange knowledge and also work together. But so because it's non-profit, and we are not financed by the states. Not yet, and maybe never. Yes, it's a challenge every year to manage to raise enough money to pay our teacher, to rent the rooms, to make everything that the summer school is fabulous. Because when I was in Engelsberg, I think I had it was incredible. It was really like, for me, it changed my life, and that was what I wanted to bring in Belgium. And maybe one day we will manage to gain that level. I think Bruges was really something close to it. And the new thing with that summer school in Bruges is that we are really working with craftsmen, and this year organizing also workshops. So that's the big challenge, is to make this work, and to have a school which is more practical. So the architects worked with the craftsmen.
Yeah.
So please. So what I was going to say is, if you want to give us some help to the association, and I think that's exactly the same thing for the Utrecht Summer School, any euro or any pounds or dollar is welcome, and it really helps us to bring education to another level. And I think it's really, really important. Thank you. And thank you, Joseph, for this fabulous presentation. And I hope I really do my best. And sorry again for my English. Thank you.
Your English is very, very good. And then where do you see yourself going with La Table Ronde, say, in the next 5-10 years? What's the ultimate goal that you're aiming towards?
So we have a plan to, the main idea and the dream is to have a permanent school in Bruges, which trains not only architects but also craftsmen, and that they work together all the time. It's something very, very practical. More access on architecture and construction than urban planning, that it is like it is the case in Utrecht. So it's really to manage to create that permanent school, which is something quite difficult. And I think every year we are trying to make the school a bit longer. And this year, for example, the system is a bit different. Students can choose modules depending on their age and also level. So it's not too long for them also. So what we will do in the future, and I think that will start in 2 years, is to have a summer school and then a winter school. And then hopefully the city of Bruges will help us to make, as it is the case with the College of Europe, where the functionary are trained in Bruges, which is the only school so in Bruges. So that's a good thing for us. We don't have an architecture school in this city, so there is no competition, there is no opposition, and the city also, let's say, is really protective and very maintains so well its heritage and architecture. It's not fixed in time, It's crazy, like how the inhabitants embellish their house every day. And I think it's really like an example as a city in Europe. So that's why also we decide to come here and to create that permanent school one day in that city.
Yeah, well, fantastic. I hope it happens. We certainly need it.
We hope to.
Yes. I think we'll transition now. Do you want me to keep sharing my screen, or do you want to share your screen with me?
If you can, that would be great.
Okay, sure, yeah.
This work for you? Yeah. So yes, it is my pleasure to introduce Joseph. Joseph is a computer engineer by training, but above all, an immeasurable lover of architecture who brings lots of effort by promoting beautiful architecture and planning in Europe. Joseph is the founder of the Institute of Traditional Architecture and the president of the Traditional and Classical Architecture and Urban Design Teaching, which ran the Utrecht Summer School this year in 2023, which is also called the Let's Build Beautiful City, with a great team of people that are also working with the association. So great links. So Joseph is from Canada. He is from Edmonton. As you can see on this picture, it's not I wouldn't say it's miserable. It's different from what we got in Europe, but as you can see, it's car-centered, and it's, I think, I would explain what I'm saying is that Joseph decides in 2007, he went for 3 weeks on a first trip to Europe. Yeah, with his wife, with his fabulous wife, and they've done 1 week in London. So on this picture is their first when they arrived in London, and I think it was maybe an aesthetic shock for both of them, and they loved that trip. I think it really changed his view. He was passionate about architecture before, but I think this really opened his mind. And he saw, as he said, the light in beauty, and he discovered something completely new. So that was really, like a child who discovered something. It was really big, and also he could compare those beautiful cities. He started in London, and then he went to Paris. He could compare this also to his home city, Edmonton, which was completely different. And yes, so I think they had like a beautiful trip for 3 weeks. He had the time to study those 3 fabulous cities, so London, Paris, and then Rome. Yes, Rome. So and then he went back home, I think, with lots of maybe question ideas, and that's where he started going to the library and looking for many books. And I think many books inspired him and changed his way of thinking, but also he learned a lot. And in one book, so A Vision of Britain, that you might know, written by the new king of England, King Charles, he saw that project. So this picture of Richmond from 1998, a project designed by Queen Lanterie. And I think he was amazed by knowing that this was built today, as I was amazed when I knew that it was possible to build that way. I think it really changed your life. And then he was just like, why don't we have this also at home? Why all the new buildings are ugly and do not have any spirit? So in 2010, Joseph went to a second trip to Europe. And he visits Paris, and then also the Vallée de la Loire, with all the beautiful castle and all the beautiful buildings there. So he really wants to come back in Europe. Yeah, I think Europe really changed his life. And then in 2012, he decided to do a trip to Europe with his 4 kids. But that trip was a no return. It might have been, but it has not been. So they decide with his wife to settle in Utrecht, so in the Netherlands, in the beautiful city of Utrecht, and to start a new life there. And that's a picture of him and his child in Amsterdam, the first city they visit in the Netherlands. So you can see maybe the joy of the kids, but also the beautiful, I think, train station behind. And I think also, it's interesting to see the child reaction to architecture. I'm not sure in the future that this reaction will be maybe different, but I think they were really happy and excited to see something really different. And then in 2014, Joseph, with all his background, reading books, learning, and then in 2014, so he decided to create the Institute of Traditional Architecture, which was and is still a platform and also a place where you can learn a lot of things. So kind of a guide to learn about how architecture can last, all the different elements, principles, the fundamental principles that make building beautiful and durable. And so I think many books inspired him to do that. Many also people he met also, because this movement is very different from what we got into the modernist movement. It's very, very open mind, lots of freedom and lots of exchange of knowledge. Yes, so I think this institute is also a way for him to And I think for us, it helps us a lot because I'm using it. It's very, really helpful when you come from, from outside, this movement, and you don't know about anything, and you want to know how to create beautiful building, because the only thing we see today, I mean, apart from, I know there is many projects, but it's still, I think we are still a minority, and I hope it will really change in the future. I mean, at least in Belgium, it's terrible. The ugliness is still very important in new construction. So this institute is really how to bring, how our new European buildings can be, how to make building correct also. So all the grammar, that's very important. And then in 2015, Joseph participates in the Summer School of Madrid, which is organized by INBO Spain and the Manzano Prize. And I think here he discovered also, he learned a lot, but he discovered also a huge network of friendly people. I think that was a really nice trip. And that's exactly what's also happened to me and to many, many architects and students today. And then I think this is 2017, the UCU.
Yes, I think so. It was either 16 or 17. I actually have to look back, but yeah.
Okay. But at that time, so when he went back to the summer school in Spain, I think a few years after, he really has that idea of having a school in Utrecht. And so he contacted the University of Notre Dame, trying to find some kind of collaboration with the University of Utrecht. And that happened. So teachers from Notre Dame, and I think others, they came and they taught a panel of very talented students from Utrecht how to design a good city. And those are like some pictures of the projects they worked on. And I think that was also like very important in Joseph's life. And I think this will be even more important in the future. I think, so that's a visit in Ulebrug. Ulebrug is an urban extension of Knokke-Heist, a new urban extension of Knokke-Heist in Belgium, close to the coast, that has been designed by Andrés Duhany and Léon Krier, I mean, the master plan, and then many talented architects from all over Europe worked on the different buildings. And then there is a team also in Ulebrug who is crazily good, and they are like making this happening, like they're still building things. It's really good. So in 2021, so La Table Ronde de l'Architecture and INBO, the Netherlands, organized a visit there with like conferences and also walk through that new neighborhood. It's the first time I met Joseph at that time. It was the first time I met him, and also the first time I think he met some of the members of INBO NL. And then I think he had a discussion with Miek Bos, a really good friend, and they decided with other people of the great team. So we have Ruben, we have Flavio, we have Vincent, we have Alexander, of course we have Joseph, and we have Miek. And I think that was the moment where they decide that there will be a summer school in the Netherlands, and it will be called Let's Build a Beautiful City, because that's very important for the future. And so that's like a family picture. That's the first class of that summer school, which was amazingly well organized, and the result was also incredible. So you had teachers coming from all over Europe to teach like fundamental principles behind like good urban planning, but also architecture. And so here you can see some of the teachers and also like all the students in front of the door, and behind that were the classrooms. So they had like some visits within the city of Utrecht, and they worked. So those were some sketches made during the summer school. And there were like conferences, lectures, measure drawings made within the city, and then presentation, because during that summer school, they develop different urban projects, but also architectural projects for a real site, for a real estate developer to develop a part of a city which I think was close to Utrecht. And those are like different proposals done by the students. So you can see master plan, some perspective during the final presentation, beautiful drawing. And then that's the school of this year, which is very important. So this year in Europe, happening more and more. And please, if you want to create a summer school, we will be pleased to help. It's very important, and many students are looking for that. It's really important for them. It changed their life. So it's very important to support the summer school if you can. That's very, very important. And the Let's Build Beautiful City start I think a week ago, something like that, a Kickstarter to raise money to be able to run that summer school as the best as possible. And they are really doing a great job. Most of the people managing the summer school, they are volunteers. So we really do that by passion, by love, and because some of us, we were the students, and we want to bring another kind of education and everything we didn't have when we were at school. So very important to support it, and I will put the link of the Kickstarter in the discussion. So please help. We thank you all for that. And thank you for this fabulous organization. I think we can open the discussion. Maybe if you have some question.
Yep, I think this is a good opportunity to start digging into all this. How about Mr. Vorish? Do we have any questions yet?
Yes, there is one question by Catherine Johnson. And the question is Joseph an architect or a normal person? That's actually the question. So would you please elaborate on that?
That's Catherine.
I'm not an architect,
thank you.
So, yeah, I'm not an architect, so I guess that leaves the other option. I'm a normal person. So I'm an engineer by trade, not even a civil engineer, but actually a computer engineer. But growing up in Edmonton, there wasn't really a lot to inspire me to get into architecture. I enjoyed, doodling and making buildings in my spare time, but I thought, well, everyone kind of likes that, so I didn't think it was that special. It wasn't really till our first trip to Europe that really awoke something deep within me. And I've regretted not being an architect ever since.
Joseph, that makes it even more extraordinary. And I'm so thrilled with what you did. And if I might I do want to I want to have a summer program. I live in Connecticut and New England, and it wouldn't happen for another year or two, but I have a location and I have to get all the other parts. So thank you for the invitation, Nadia, to ask both of you for help. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the need is great. Actually, we really do try and collaborate and work together because we don't think there's not enough students. We think quite the opposite. There's too many students. So we're absolutely willing and happy to help Catherine. So feel free to get in touch, and we'll help out.
I think one of the questions is the age of the students. So in our summer school, so the summer school in Bruges, the students, they are between 16 and 35. We are really trying to get more and more students which are still in high school and want to do architecture or working in crafts in the future.
Yeah, and then in Utrecht, we had some people that were still in high school. Those were younger students, about 15, I think. And then we had some people that were retired or thinking about retiring or going back and trying something new. I can't remember. I just saw Mika's chat come up. I think she said 72. So we had a really wide range of students, and we were thrilled with that. We thought the diversity was really fantastic. Some students had architecture backgrounds, some didn't. And it was really nice to get that mix of people with all the different life experiences together in the same room. Really made a rich program.
Next question.
Roger Jackson asks if your schools accredit and put the students in the path for professional licensure.
Maybe I can speak to the Let's Build a Beautiful City one. No, it is not accredited. And that is something, of course, that we are challenged with. I think every university is always struggling with the accreditation process. Even the established universities, it's a bit of a challenge. It is something that I hope we're able to do in Utrecht, say within the next 5 to 10 years. But at this point, it's more of a dream than a goal because I don't know exactly the steps that are required, but we do have ambitions to make a full-time architecture academy in Utrecht that would be accredited, but we're nowhere near that yet. That's more of a point on the horizon that we're aiming for, but no clear path there yet.
Yeah, it's exactly the same case for our summer school. We hope to have a master in few years, maybe more. But for now, it's not accredited. People really come, and I think it's exactly the same with Utrecht. The students, either they are young or old, they come by passion because they love drawing, because they love beauty, because they want to be with people, because they are looking for a community that are thinking, or have the same philosophy than them. So it's really like, for now there is no accreditation.
All right, so next up, there's a mix of comments and questions. Bart Urban from Berlin also asks, just a fun info, there are currently 20,000 architecture students in Germany alone. It's crazy. And think what most of them are, in quotation marks, learning. Well, next up, Mark Wilson Jones adds, an observation. I teach an architecture department in the UK. i.e. establishment, like practically all. But there is more openness amongst the students for tradition recently. Not necessarily staff, but students, yes. So question is this: how many students come from usual architecture backgrounds?
Maybe I start. So in our part, I would say half of the students are from architecture school, and they were exactly like I was, so a bit lost and frustrated not to be able to do what they want. But I will say something also, because I studied in UK, in London. I see some change. When I was studying a few years ago, I see some of the teachers which are architects, which have a more open minds. So even the picture Joseph show was one of the first drawing I did in my first year of master degree. It was accepted. I mean, at the end of my second year of master degree, when I was really trying to do traditional projects, teachers were telling me I was a pastiche, a lot of times, but that was fine, because it's okay. It is the way it is now. But I see that's more and more teacher and also architect, maybe in UK, it's very different from Belgium, are using, some traditional element, not in the good way, but they are starting to use arches. They are looking for natural materials. They speak a lot about natural and technique that have made their proof in university in UK, not in Belgium at all. So it's changing, I think. I think like in some university, things are changing slowly. So it's good also that, all the students who are looking for something else and who really want to learn, intensively, they have like another formation training and are able to ask all the questions they have.
Good, thank you. So I don't know if I'm allowed to speak or not.
Now you are, so go ahead, please.
Oh, well, yes, just to share with that, maybe just to expand on what I was saying, is in University of Bath, which is typically ranked top or very near the top in the UK. So it's a good school of architecture as far as the normal pattern goes. And I would say that a few years ago, a talk I gave just recently in November would have been greeted with metaphorical rotten tomatoes, because I basically put the case for tradition and also presenting to them some difficult arguments. I don't know if people know Branko Mitrovic's recent book, Architectural Principles in the Age of Fraud. Very interesting read, where he, I suppose, carries on some of what David Watkin was talking about in morality and architecture, but expands on that. And so I presented a number of things, not an extremely tough way, but not in a confrontational way, a little bit more of a kind of discussion. And I say, whereas 10 years ago, I think it would have been greeted with, a lot of disapproval or even anger or kickback, there was a sort of spontaneous applause, and people were sort of interested, and I was, in a sense, there was an open door. I was quite surprised, actually. So it's only just encouraging. I just want to put that in there. So that's all. Just a comment of encouragement, clearly.
There is hope in in UK, there is, things have changed like much more quickly than in Belgium, for example, because I'm more working with the French-speaking country than in Belgium or in France, where I would say modernism is really anchored, in their thinking and the way they're built today. Because we, with the association, we work with politics, and we work also with we try to work with university, but it's very complicated, and often like the opposition is just too big, you know, and we just stop to make effort with them because it's you know, it doesn't go anywhere. And I see that in some school in London, for example, in Kingston University,
Yes.
even in London Metropolitan University, some of the teachers really like they really accept. I think they accept, and they are like curious about what the students can bring, you know, without really knowing the language because they haven't learned it. They haven't. It hasn't been taught to them, but they have to learn it by itself. But I think it's quite intuitive, you know, when you start to read a book and to use it, and then you want a second one, and then, you know, you're starting to draw a project, even if the first one is really bad, you know, I think today, because there is no school like Notre Dame, you know, we have like some summer school. I think students in architecture school, they need to work by themselves. But it's really good that they know there is a community behind that can help them, you know, with architects, historians, urbanists, craftsmen. If they have any question, they can just come to us and ask any question they have. And if they have the possibility to come during the summer in one of the summer schools in Europe, and there is many summer schools, more and more, in Spain, in Utrecht, in Belgium, in UK, in Sweden also it's coming back. So I think there is lots of hope. I'm really happy. I think I was really frustrated and pessimistic a few years back, but now I see there is lots of hope for education.
Excellent. Well, I'll just leave you with a comment that if you can, your next task is to crack Italy. Because there's the irony that, you know, so many of us are sort of take the great heritage from Italy, and, you know, that's inspired architecture all over Europe and so on. And yet in Italy, they're the incredibly hard line. You know, it's like you cannot look back in the past. You know, that's anti-zeitgeist. You know, that's all history. That's all gone. It's wonderful, but you can't do it today. And it's really, you know, absolutely black and white.
Same here in Germany.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was like that in Belgium a few years ago. So I think everything is possible. We need few people, you know, who want to change things. It takes time and it's difficult because you know, when the opposition is there, I mean, the opposition, it's just the architects, you know, it's a club. The other ones, they're all with us. So it's not that difficult. I think, you know, if there is some students from Italy that learn that this community exists, that they can learn something else, maybe one of them will, you know, be interesting by creating something. I think now what we need is to spread, you know, the knowledge as much as possible where we can, and Italy, of course. And I think maybe the next question.
Yeah, maybe if I could just add.
All right, just a quick heads up. In around 5 minutes, we will go to the next Babel conversation. But if you guys want to continue chatting a little, you have the time.
Just a quick comment about the Netherlands. I don't know, maybe some of you are aware of a paper that was written maybe 5-10 years ago. I'm not quite sure when, but they did a very academic study. It wasn't by architects, it was by, I believe, PhD candidates about the price of homes depending on their so-called style. And the traditional inspired homes sold at a 15% profit over the more modern homes. So in the Netherlands recently, of course, developers sat up and took notice of this because it's 15% pure profit. The construction methods are actually more or less the same, so it's not like they're you know, building them with craftsmen. But the property developers definitely have paid attention to this, and now almost every home development you see, like home development region where they're building, say, 30, 40, 100 homes, they are all absolutely traditional leaning. They're not super beautiful, but they're also not offensive like homes built in the 80s, 90s, in the early 2000s were. So you see a lot of fairly just normal looking houses is how I would describe them. And I think that will continue in the Netherlands and hopefully leak over to Germany and Italy. But if anyone wants a copy of that paper, I'd be happy to send it to them. But it was quite remarkable, 15%, which is a very high margin.
Well, I'd like to actually ask you to share with us like your 4 points of this conversation so far before we take on additional questions and then do a break for the CEUs. What would you claim would be the 4 points, 4 most important things that you are saying in what you were saying just now?
Well, I think there's an absolute need for traditional architecture. And not only is there a need, there's really a desire. So I think there's a very large untapped market. I think we're just scratching the surface of it.
And what would you say drives that market? Are those people just uneducated troglodytes, people with bad taste?
No, like the Belgian summer school, I would say the Utrecht summer school had about 50% of its students were from either an architecture or urbanism background, and then the rest were just interested in it. I think what drives the demand is just the love and appreciation of beauty and a better way. If you experience the new parts of cities and the old parts of cities, I think everyone that isn't trained by the establishment, has a very clear opinion which one they experience it more pleasantly.
Can you speak to the business of accreditation versus, what's the relationship with academia in all this? How do you define your position? Do you want to wind up in an academic program? Do you think that this is a different kind of discipline?
For me personally, yes, I would like to wind up in academia and have a fully accredited program in academia. I think these summer schools are filling a very large gap in the market, but I think ultimately the only way to really drive massive amounts of change is to start having more Notre Dames, more Utah Valley universities, more University of Americas. And so all those are in America, which is a bit ironic, but we need a lot more of those in America, but we also need a lot more in Europe as well. Because right now, the summer schools are doing great. They're providing value. But as I'm sorry, I can't remember who it was, commented, there's 20,000 architecture students in Germany right now. So it's tough to compete when you have a total of 30 or 40 people taking summer schools every summer. So yeah, definitely I think the end goal needs to be we need more accredited full programs like Notre Dame.
I'm wondering about the actual teaching, because I have been, like you, struggling with the matter of how to create a useful curriculum. And I know that there is the so-called Beaux-Arts method, but before the Beaux-Arts method, and probably there are different Beaux-Arts methods in Germany, Italy, England, France, and so on. Each one probably has their own style of that. But before that, there was no actual schooling of architecture, and normal people were actually taught architecture along with reading, writing, and arithmetic, just as a natural course of civilized life. And that's true actually for all the cultures in the whole world. I think that all the various cultures all have their architectures, and they are all sort of part of common culture. How now? What's your direction now? How do you frame your curriculum as opposed to Beaux-Arts or other academic enterprises?
I think what you are saying now is really, really important. It's I think the difference, and I think the quality that we got, with the summer school, it's like small classes, very one-to-one discussion. Students, they get to know each other, so there is a community. I think the knowledge is much more it's better used and better spread than in huge university like Brussels, where I was, where there is 600 students. You don't hear what the teacher is saying. You have to be in front of it, and you don't, university today, I would say students, when they start, at least in Belgium it's like that, because the education it's quite cheap compared to other countries. The students, they don't really came to I would say to learn and to be passionate. They just have to choose, between medicine, between laws. They will choose maybe architecture. I would say, maybe 20% of the students who choose architecture, they definitely want to do architecture, but many, it's just, just like that. And I think, it's architecture is so important that this is really, really bad. So one thing we hope to do also with the association is to bring architecture back to high school, back to, you know, to young people. So why? Because also the, you know, all the traditional construction sector is, how do you say in English, méprisé, seen as a bad thing. You know, all those jobs like carpenter, stonemason. No one goes to those jobs because no one talk about them, and then parents, they will say, oh no, don't do that, it's difficult, you will not earn money, and all those things. So there is a real problem also with the traditional construction sector, because they need people, they need young people, and they don't have them because no one speaks about those jobs. So architect is important, but then there is the people who will build it, which are more important, I think. So that's why I think construction and architecture should go back to high school. As you said, it was in high school. And, you know, drawing is a language like speaking, so they should learn to draw. I think this is highly important, and we shouldn't have, you know, just like it is in Belgium, for example, an option where a student can choose to do arts, and the other students, they will do another option. So I think everyone should learn to draw. It's so important. It's a way to, you know, express speak.
Yourself.
Yeah, express myself. Yeah. So I think high school is so that's also why I think if summer school can, I think they should really touch those young people, because parents also are looking for that. We have lots of parents who are contacting us and asking if there is like course during the year, because their child, they want to learn to draw before going to university. So I think drawing is a really a lack today in school, and that's something that could really help students when they arrive at architecture school, and also not only, as I said, drawing, but also construction, that students in high school learn about construction, because at the end, you know, it's our shelter, it's where we live, it's everywhere around us, except if we live, you know, in the far countryside. Even there, you will find houses everywhere, but it's so important. So I think they should, and you know, we haven't speak that much about ecology, you know, in the history. It's been just a topic. Every day we heard about ecology, but what's really ecology is when things stay, you know, things will stay for the generation to come, and not just, you know, like your telephone, you know, change every 5 years. So I think, you know, students, they could learn many things from architecture that will help them into their life, even if they will not do architecture. You know, all those students in high school, they will finish to have a job. Maybe if they can to buy a house, they will need to know how to maintain their house, how to maybe build, you know, an extension, or maybe to build their house. So I think it's really important that we don't focus only on architects, but really on, you know, people. And I think this will really change the mind. Yeah.
All right. So,
Thank
Ms.
you.
Everard, I think soon we need to move on, but Mr. Salingaros has a quick comment before we go to the next barbell discussion, right? Or shall we move on, Dr. Boris?
1 minute, Professor Salingaros, and continue after this session. We're running a few minutes late.
I was waiting for a long time.
He was waiting for so long.
Thank you, Dr. Burras. I wanted to make someone raise the point of Italy. I have a terrible experience with Italy, just like I have terrible experience with Germany and with Greece. But with Italy, about 15 to 12 years ago, a large group of people in Italy was working to bring back traditional architecture, collaborating, publishing, having influence in the, and it was all stamped out totally with threats to the government, which canceled. Threats came by telephone, and an international conference on traditional architecture was canceled the morning it was going to begin in Rome. And all of us had arrived in Rome, and we were announced that it was canceled because there was a terrible threat to the establishment. So there is a lot of entrenched power in Italy that prevented what we were trying to do, and all of it was just squashed. And the people in Italy now are just totally subjugated. So, you know, what Joseph and Nadia and everyone else is doing, but you can ask Lucien. Lucien was in Italy at that time. There is such entrenched resistance to this that you have to find it very, very carefully. Now, as far as the academic certification, that's a double-edged sword, because the present day academic certification will forbid you to teach what you want to teach. It forces you into the Bauhaus teaching method, because the regulations in the United States are exactly the Bauhaus teaching method. So that's again, I will stop right there. There are snakes. Be careful we don't tread on these snakes, because they will bite us, and they're full of venom. Okay, thank you, Nadia. Wonderful.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you very much. I want, while the people who are filling out the forms for the CEU registration are doing so, I would like to tell you about an initiative that just started a few months ago. It's the Traditional Architecture, Urbanism, and Crafts Council. And the idea here is for us to actually have council of all of the organizations and players and actors and what have you in the traditional area, and acknowledging that it's not just about architecture, but also includes the urbanism and crafts. We had an initial meeting with Robert Krasser back in November. There was actually Roger Jackson had composed something that winds up being a 2-page list of people who are devoted to this body of knowledge and the bodies of knowledge and the knowledge bases that are inherent in all this. And there is a good number abroad as well. The point is that people need to know about each other and support each other and coordinate and use each other in the best possible sense, bringing back good practice for the built environment on this planet. We're going to move on. Dustin, don't shut down the poll for another 5 minutes or so. People who are still filling it out, fill it out.